Alright, so back with another devlog. This is a long time coming. I mean, I was kind of waiting to get the build done and make a devlog with it, but in the end I am actually adding a lot more stuff and it's taking me a lot more time than I thought it would, which is why I decided to make a devlog kind of in between and talk basically to about all of the changes, even concept changes that we've gone through, as well as what the build is going to be about and what all the things I'm going to add into the build a little bit. So anyway, let's start with the concept changes, I guess, that we've done to the game. So last time we talked about concept was at the very beginning, and I said that the concept was we kind of decided that the concept was going to be about some kind of outlaw, basically surviving against waves of guards, police, and up to like military or whatever in this kind of steampunk world. So obviously the steampunk world has changed, but now instead of you being somewhat of like an outlaw, the story changed a little bit, and instead it's kind of like this steampunk civilization is now conquering or is now colonizing this new land, and in this land they find shrines and temples, which they start to pillage basically, and then the player, then it's like an animated head statue animated, which is then given powers to protect the temple and the shrines. So that's basically now the concept. Instead of being some kind of outlaw, you are now like an animated head with elemental powers, which is again one of the things that we changed, which is now you are now using elemental power based on like fire, ice, electricity, etc., and other things. All right, and additionally to that, we now have changed a little bit how I decided to change a little bit how different things work. So what we had until now was when you kill enemies you get XP, and when you get XP, when you level up you get a stat point, and then when you pick up stuff you get a passives. When you pick up stuff you have another bar, which when you level up that bar you get a passives, and then when you killed a mini boss you would get a weapon. So now we changed a little bit of how this works. Now you get XP by both killing enemies and picking up stuff, which I guess it used to be a gear, but now it's probably going to change into something more related to the theme, I guess. Then you get passives from actually killing mini bosses. So when you kill a mini boss, they drop a relic of some kind, and you get a passive from that. And then to get weapons, you have shrines that spawn on the map, and when you complete the little objective of those shrines, you get a weapon, basically. And I have ideas with it, like maybe having different types of shrines, dedicated to different elements, and then getting weapons from that element. But right now, there's only one shrine, and you get all of the weapons from it. All right. So what else did we get? We obviously, since last time, I've gotten a lot more art from the artist, which is awesome. So first of all, we've got finally the player character, which is now this stone statue, which is animated, which has been animated. It's not animated per se. We also have new enemies, which still follow the same structure as before, which are kind of guards or military type units or enemy type things, I guess, in kind of like a steampunk vibe to it. And finally, we also have a little bit of elemental effects at stay, which I can start using for the weapons. Now that I'll have to change them, which I've not done yet, but I'll have to change the weapon from being weapons, from being actual guns, to being elemental effects. All right. So additionally to that, I've revamped completely the upgrade system for the weapons. Instead of being a linear thing, which only improves, like always the same stat, you'll now have a kind of upgrade tree with sometimes just one upgrade, but sometimes you could have two upgrades and the same kind of depth. And I can play with that quite a lot. I can decide whether I want only one upgrade or if I want three upgrades in the theme depth and so on. And I can really play with that, give different choices, and the idea is to give players choices as to how you want the weapon to behave, instead of being like, if this weapon behaves like this, that's it, like most other games do. So additionally, I've done a similar thing with the passive system. Passives used to also give like normal stats. That's no longer the case. I removed all of the passives that only gave stats, and now passive gives special effect, and they can have no upgrades whatsoever. So once you get it, that's it. And or some of them might have up to like 7 or up to whatever number of incremental upgrades, I guess, if I want to, which is quite nice. So an upgrade could be, for example, I have the additional health upgrade, which right now is also mixed with the kind of armor upgrade, but I'll probably change that in the future. So right now the way it is you get 1 health, then the next upgrade you get of the same type, you would get 1 armor up, 1 upgrade, like armor health, which works a little bit like the armor in Binding of Isaac. And then the next one would potentially be another health, and then potentially another armor. And then the way that armor works also is kind of like in a recharge thing. So you always have it. Once you lose it, you can regain it by waiting enough time. So not exactly like Binding of Isaac, I guess. It's more of like a shield in a way. So in that upgrade, you could also have in the same upgrade like line, I guess you could also have reduced cooldown for that, and stuff like that. Which is nice because it gives me a lot more flexibility, and it allows me to do a lot more interesting things with the passives. I also added the ability to change between manual and auto targeting with the weapons, which I saw in a different game that they had that, and I thought it was pretty nice, especially when suddenly you have a target like a mini boss or something else. I feel like it really gives you the control, so that it's no longer shooting randomly, but rather you can really focus on that mini boss if you wanted to, which is, I think, a very great idea. And yeah, just a simple click of a button, and you switch between the auto and the manual, which is quite nice. And lastly, the little change that I made is that XP now fuses with each other. So when you have multiple right now gears next to each other, they might come together and become like a bigger gear, which gives the same amount of XP as both separate, but it basically reduces the amount of clutter that you might get, the amount of objects in the level, as well as it is actually quite satisfying when you instead of just randomly picking up stuff, lots of really small stuff, you have like this big objective. Oh, look at that! You have this gear over there, XP gear, which is a lot bigger. So it's like, oh, I'm definitely gonna pick that up, and you make sure that you push through the enemies in order to get that. And additionally to that, I've made some overall balances and changes around everything. So finally, I guess to round this up, there's still a couple of things I want to add. So first of all, I wanted to talk about what are my plans. So my plans, like I said at the beginning of the video, is to make a build. So the next big build is going to be a new build that I'm going to make into a browser build, so that everyone can play in the browser, and to get more people interested in the game, and more feedback and more ideas, more community. Again, I'm going to reiterate that the idea of this project, to make it live constantly, is also, to always develop it on Twitch, is to also have the community build the game with me. So I would love if I could get feedback from people and suggestions from people all the time of like, oh, it would be awesome if you could get this type of weapon, or it would be awesome if this type of enemy could be in, or this type of mechanic, or this type of upgrade, or passive, or anything. So this is kind of the idea. So having now really, which is why now I think I'm focusing really on trying to get this build, trying to get this browser build out to, try to get the attention of more people, and potentially start getting, more feedback and more people playing the game, which is at the end of the day is the objective. Which is also why I also decided to, instead of continuing to update regularly the build I already have on itch with very small upgrades, small changes, and having a game that in essence is still was, I mean, very, very early, was almost no gameplay, almost no art, nothing. I decided to kind of pause the making of these builds to be able to focus on having something a lot more playable and a lot more eye-catching to start with, you know, from the start, to like this get more attention. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about the quote-unquote roadmap to this browser demo. So I'd like to add a couple of extra passives. Obviously, a lot of things without. I don't have like a list of the passives itself, but right now I think removing all of these only stat passives, then I'm reduced to a very few. So I would like to work on more passives, more interesting passives. I want to make I want to make enemies feel a little bit more different. So right now, I've already started with this with the balancing and stuff, but right now most of the enemies are just basically, they only change the stats. It's only do they move, how fast do they move, and how much health they have. Everything else kind of acts the same way. So I'll try to work so that the enemies work slightly differently. Maybe with some kind of charge ability, or maybe some kind of, we've got a helicopter coming, which might have a kind of dive, you know, drop bombs type thing. Kind of, you know, like maybe would like drop bombs on a kind of straight line when they get close enough to you or something like that. We'll see. I want to like revamp a little bit the stat system, change the names, which don't make too much sense right now. And also I have an idea of milestones. I think I talked about this before, which is a little bit how, for example, the game Stone Shard does it, which is when you put points on strength, let's say, the main stat that strength would increase, for example, it might be damage, let's say, right? I'm probably not going to call it strength, but you get the idea. But once you get to strength 5, for example, that unlocks one of the first milestones, and when you get to that milestone, you get an extra, something extra. So for example, if you increase strength, you might get knockback, you know, you increase the amount of knockback that your attack do. So then it gives them a little bit more of an objective whenever you put stats on something. It's like, it's more interesting. Like, it's not interesting when you have a stat to 4 and another stat to 2, for example. It's probably more interesting to put that stat to 5 and get the milestone that continuing to increase that stat that you had to 2. I guess what I think is something else to kind of look up to and kind of work towards, I guess, which I think is interesting in and of itself. So anyways, I like to add a point system, a simple point system, you know, since there's not going to be too much replayability in the sense that I'm not going to have meta progression yet, then adding some kind of point system, some kind of way of kind of telling the player, well, you've done this well, can you do better type thing. It's nice. And then the rest is going to be mostly polish overall, so just going over, I guess, the passives, the weapons, the balancing, all of that. I want to add, one important thing is I want to add on hover and like tooltip stuff, so that if you put your mouse on top of like a passive, or mostly on top of the stats or the upgrades, when you see the weapon upgrade tree, that it tells you what they do, because right now you don't really have that information unless you're actually getting that. I want to completely revamp the visuals in terms of like the UI, you know, borders and stuff like that, the health UI and stuff like that, especially because we're also changing the theme. So the player stuff is going to be more related to these temple, tribal type thing rather than this steampunk thing. The steampunk is going to be more reserved towards the enemy stuff. I want to add, you know, simple damage displays, which, you know, so that you can tell how much damage you're doing to the enemies and how much these 10% increase in damage changes, right? And yeah, pretty much that's it. I mean, obviously, I write here, I have here written down, like, you know, balancing specifically fonts, you know, picked passive visuals, and stuff like that. So the other picked passive visuals, that idea is that I haven't really worked on that yet. is I don't want passives to just be like, it has to be, because now passives are going to be more relevant and more visual. Like, for example, the armor and so on. I want the armor to be visual on the player. So maybe you'll have, you know, like a bubble around the player, which when you get hit, kind of like this, you know, destroys itself, and then kind of slowly regenerates or something. It has an animation when it regenerates, and stuff like that. So yeah, that is pretty much it, and that's what we've been doing since. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how long it will take me to get this build out. I don't want to give any estimation, because things change very fast, and it's already taking me a lot longer than I expected. But yeah, I mean, the next update, the Mez devlog, is definitely going to be this build devlog. Well, I'll publish and I'll tell you that, yeah, I've done the build is out. So yeah, that's basically it. Hope you're interested in the project. You can keep an eye on it. Follow me on Twitch if you want to see the streams and give me suggestions already. And, you know, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more information and other types of content. And there you go. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.